afternoon, depending on where you are. Let us set our intentions using the Four Measurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. I think today there was time zone changes in Europe and some other parts of the world. So some people may have the wrong time today, but we'll sort that out for. I wasn't aware of that till this morning, but we'll sort that out for next week. And we'll talk about tomorrow. Next week's going to be a different day and time, and we'll discuss that before we wrap up today. But our fellow student Sharon Leaf went into the hospital earlier this week with COVID and was suffering a lot. And I posted about it, and many of you sent voice messages to her and sent messages on Instagram of support and love and caring. I wasn't quite aware of how you guys were kind of knowing each other and knew of her, and a lot of you knew each other virtually through this. And I know for a fact that your support meant a lot to her mental state, because she's been going through the war in the hospital. It was looking pretty grim a few days ago, earlier in the week, last week. And she was in a coma a couple of times. And at one point it did not look like she was coming out of that. And your support and love really strengthened her mental attitude, which enabled her and gave her help to fight this. She said so herself. She sent me an email, and I'm going to share some of it with you. Hi, Michael. I can't thank you and everyone enough. Here are some thoughts I was having that are hard to express. Please share with the meditation family. I came to a realization, an epiphany, if you will, something that I take from this whole experience. That is that my suffering, though it caused others to suffer, and for that I'm sorry, but it brought a lot of people together. The more that joined together, hopefully at least one person out there who lost hope in humanity or never had hope in humanity at all, either gained it back or gained it for the first time. And when we were all coming together, it showed our true human nature, which is compassionate, just as His Holiness the Dalai Lama tells us. If just one person saw that or felt it, was inspired to keep that compassion in their hearts, and if just one person came to that realization for the first time or came back to that realization and gave them hope, then my suffering was certainly worth it. Honestly, if I have to go through it again to reach one more person, I would gladly do it again with no hesitation. This is my purpose here on earth, though I always felt that always was my purpose. I feel it even more now and more inspired to keep reaching, even if it's just one person at a time. You see, I always thought I was never reaching enough people or helping enough people, or that I was never doing enough good in the world. I finally see that just even one at a time is enough. I feel like Eddie at the end of the movie, The Five People You Meet in Heaven, when his fifth person showed him all the lives he did affect and did help and all the good he did do in his life. I'm so blessed to see that before the end of my life. Truly going through that suffering has made me happier than I've ever been in my life thus far. As long as at least one of my fellow human beings has benefited from my suffering, then I can never be happier. Then my goal has started to be fulfilled. I have you to thank, along with all my brothers and sisters that reached out and prayed. Because you reached out, you allowed my suffering to benefit someone else, and for that I'm eternally grateful and can never repay that debt, but I'll do my damnedest to do so. This is the purpose of life for me anyway, to spread that compassion to as many people possible. If I'm able to spread compassion, I hope others can find happiness and strength. I won't go through the boring details and what I see as less important things that saved my life on the medical side, though I do recognize that part helped. I truly believe compassion saved my life, and I'm going to tell you how I did that. It started when I saw the Instagram post about what was happening to me, and asking for love, support, and prayers from me. The first night in the hospital, I was still awake, and comments on the post and some messages in my Instagram box came flooding in. What then happened? Well, I felt a very intense and powerful good force, energy, like it hit me like someone threw an energy ball right inside of me. This energy ball I saw in my mind's eye as a very bright glow. There are no words in any language in the entire world that can explain the feeling that I had from then on, but I will do my best. Imagine the feeling of love. Now imagine filling the universe with that love. Well, the universe is endless, and so was this feeling of love. This, I truly believe, was the compassion from all of those sending healing energies, prayers, and good wishes. I by no means saved my life. Doctors, okay, they had a part in it, but it was the compassion of all my brothers and sisters in the meditation family that saved my life. For that, I am eternally grateful and in debt to, and can never repay that debt. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try like hell, even if I'm repaying my entire life. Strangers are just family we haven't met yet. That I truly believe. You are always my family. I just didn't meet you until I started joining the meditation stream. I am so blessed that I got to meet and have forever in my heart this family that I never knew I had. I won't go in particulars about my blood or adoptive family, but let's just say they weren't a true family. All of you, all of us, that's what a true family is. We, all of us in the world, are family, human family. Many, many, many of them we just haven't met. Again, here, words cannot express my true feelings of deep appreciation, love, gratitude, and thankfulness that I have for all of you. Maybe if we try this, when we meditate, just try and feel that energy, focus on that loving, compassionate energy, and I will send it out to all of you. Maybe you will feel it, and then you will know what I'm trying to express that words simply cannot do. I am truly blessed. I only hope that one day I can bring such compassion and happiness to at least one other person, but I will strive to bring it to as many people that I meet as possible. This compassion that you all have given to me, much love to you all. So I would say if for that reason alone we started this class, it certainly has been worth it. And you are all responsible for that. And I'm very, 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 very grateful to you all. I really mean that. Sharon, it was put into an induced coma last night, but they hope to wake her up today. I believe they're playing this for her while she's asleep. She actually attended the class via Zoom last Monday when she was in the hospital. So just remember that, just remember that there's your participation here and your commitment to whatever this means to you has brought a lot of benefit to someone in a very, very difficult period of their life. With that in mind, let's meditate. Let's do 11 minutes meditation. Okay. Keep your back straight but not too rigid, and your head slightly tilted forward. Teeth apart, mouth either open or closed, but lightly relaxed, tongue behind the teeth. Breathe normal through the nose. Focus on the place between your nose and upper lip where the breath goes in and out. And if a thought comes, recognize your thinking, recognize the thought, then go back to the breath. Don't follow the thought. Don't judge the thought. Don't try to push it away. Just recognize that you are thinking. We use the image of the sky, clear, blue, unstained, vast, infinite, limitless, full of potentiality. That is the mind, and the thought or emotion that arises from the mind and will dissipate back into the mind if we leave it alone. And go back to the breath. If a lot of thoughts keep coming, that's all okay. If it's a lot of thoughts, recognizing the thoughts, going back to the breath, if you feel like you're just in a circle of that, doing it over and over, that's okay, as long as you're doing it. The point is not to just follow chains and trains of thought that just keep going on and on and on and on, which is normally what we've been doing and do very often. So don't measure that as any degree of success or failure. Simple. Recognize your thinking, go back to the breath. Somehow that image of sky, when you go back to the breath and just that image of sky, almost you're identifying with it. You're identifying your being, your mental and even physical being in a sense with that sky. Like that is you. You're not separate from it, and it's not separate from you. That's helpful to me. Okay, awesome, very good. I think I had the mic off far away from me in the beginning when I mentioned that the mantra you heard before the class started was Garchen Rinpoche, my teacher. It's a white Tara mantra, which is Tara is a female Buddha, a woman who became enlightened and who vowed to remain in the world, at least her enlightened energy to remain in the world to bring benefit to all beings. We'll take some questions to the Q&A section here. Garchen Rinpoche is my teacher. There are many great Buddhist teachers. I practice in the Tibetan tradition. There are many great Tibetan lamas. If you look in my stories, every day I post on Instagram stories of many quotes and little teachings from many great Buddhist teachers, some who are passed on, but many who are alive. And I encourage you to, if this interests you, this path, to find a teacher that you can take refuge with, and study with and become a student of. I'm a student. I'm not a teacher. I'm just kind of parroting things that I've heard from teachers. So I'm where you're at, with lots of flaws and problems and issues and things like that. I'm not preaching any way of think. I'm sharing some practices that have helped me, but I'm exactly where you're all at, really, which is working with this mess of the self that why we're all here, I guess, is to work on ourselves, to work on our minds, but let's talk a little bit, ask some questions. We'll talk about what we can. Alexandra, do you have any suggestions how to encourage a 9-year-old to meditate? I guess it would be if the 9-year-old was interested. Then simply teach them very simply the the basic practice. My youngest son took refuge with Garchen Rinpoche when he was really young. He's not so interested in Buddhism now, although uh, he used to go to a lot of teachings, but he does have a certain, I think, affinity for it ultimately. But anyway, he used to like to sit when we would sit. If you can keep it to very short amounts of time, I think it's easier for children to learn. And maybe focus more on the physical aspect rather than the mental. But I don't know. I've never really done that. So, but I do think it's possible. My friend Nick did the first class with his young son, who I think is 11 or 10. And Sterling really enjoyed it. He had tried some meditation, I think, before, but he really liked what we were doing. So it's definitely something you could share. I guess I would focus on more the physical aspects of it. Kevin, is this the only type of meditation you practice or tried? There are several different types of meditation within Tibetan Buddhism. I don't think it really makes sense to get into the other ones because they really have to be given to you through a teacher, that you're really studying with. This is more basic calm abiding meditation. This is one of the first things you'd learn in the study of Buddhism. And really it's foundational practice. This everything builds off of this and what we're doing, and you will be doing this. If you commit to Buddhism for the rest of your life, you'll be doing this practice for the rest of your life. So it's not, in Buddhism you don't really measure beginning and advance, like advance is better. It's like this is a foundational practice that'll always be inherently important to your practice. So there's nothing lower about this, or the fact that we're all beginners and we're learning this practice, that has nothing to do with how valuable it is, or how much benefit it can bring. If you only do this and make it a real habit, and are able to bring this level of and really get familiar with this, and get deeper into this practice, and be able to bring this kind of awareness, becoming aware of your thoughts and your mind and how your mind works, and being able to leave emotion and leave thought in their place. If you're able to bring that awareness into life and make this practice a real habit, and something you implement in your day-to-day life, that's gigantic. That's just gigantic, and will bring a lot of benefit to you and to other people. I feel like meditation, Scott Wordsworth, does this practice not align with Christianity? I don't know how to speak to Christianity because I don't know all the ins and outs. I learned Catholicism when I was a kid, but I don't know all the details. I think there definitely is meditation in Christianity. There are elements of it. I've heard that. And I mean, the practice of meditation has nothing to do with religion. When we're doing the sitting, the posture, the breathing, the working with thoughts, there's no religious thing that we're bringing in. And even some of the Buddhist concepts that I'm bringing in, like compassion and karma and stuff, I don't really see that as very religious either. From what I've heard, you can't be a Buddhist and be a Christian because they're different paths. When you take refuge, which is the official vow of being a Buddhist, that's the path you're on. But in terms of this practice, this meditational practice, I don't see why it would be in conflict with any religion. There's nothing really religious about it, doctrinal or dogmatic, and that we're dealing with in the meditation practice, at least. I feel like meditation could help with mental illness. I feel it might encourage patience and acceptance. Yeah, I think it does encourage patience and acceptance. And sure, I think a lot of therapists, psychotherapists, use meditation. And there's a lot of for instance, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, we've read from his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, earlier in this class. Someone who there's a movie about him called Crazy Wisdom that I love, but Trungpa Rinpoche was instrumental in Tibetan Buddhism, taking hold and root in America and the West. And a lot of his students in the early 70s in America were hippies, basically, and many of them became therapists. There's a lot of therapists that are Buddhists, and there are a lot of therapists that use Buddhist ideas and approach in their therapy, and there's a lot of therapists who don't use Buddhism per se, but do use meditation. Bonnie, was it difficult for you to stop eating meat, drinking, smoking? It wasn't difficult for me to stop eating meat. That's not, but it's not a law of Buddhism that you have to be a vegetarian. There are some, I guess, branches of Buddhism where that is part of it, but certainly not Tibetan Buddhism. It's more of a thing that kind of teacher by teacher, although that's something that I chose out of my own beliefs, and it came out of being a Buddhist. Difficult. Smoking's really difficult. There's a great book, I might have mentioned it, called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr, C-A-R-R. That has helped a lot of people to quit smoking. Drinking is difficult. There's Alcoholics Anonymous. That can help you stop drinking. But my teacher asked that we don't use intoxicants, but not every teacher does, especially in the Tibetan tradition. Some people drink. If you drink and it's not a problem in moderation, you're not alcoholic or things like that. I guess the same goes with cannabis or something. It's legal now in so many places if that's what you want to do. And it's not. My teacher asked that of his students, but not every teacher does. Buddhism is not a lot of these set laws. You can't do this or not this. There are very specific things, like in cruelty and killing and lying and stealing and things like that. There are ethical tenets that are foundational, but as far as these other things go, drinking, smoking, and what have you, it's not so spelled out. Donna, how do I go about finding a teacher? Well, I like I said, how do you find anything you're interested in? You know what I mean? Go online, look up Buddhist teachers, go to bookstores, look at my, on my stories and look at all the, you'll see posts from, I'm posting stories that are from other Instagram pages. Sign up to those Instagram pages and you'll get more teachings from more teachers, and look into where these teachers are. A lot of them travel. A lot of them have Dharma centers, maybe near you. Historically, like in Tibet, people would travel for weeks or months sometimes to get teachings. My teachers mostly in Arizona nowadays, and we used to go from New York and go to Arizona and go to teachings, and sometimes you have to go very far, but if you're lucky, you may have a Dharma center near you, and you can do, a lot of Dharma centers have groups that meet kind of like what we do. And the teacher, I was in Puerto Rico for a long time in 2015 for a number of months, and there was a little Dharma center, Tibetan Buddhist center, 10-minute walk from my hotel in San Juan. It was run by mostly older Puerto Rican women who I guess grew up Catholic but became Buddhist in the Tibetan tradition. And the Lama, Tibetan Buddhist Lama, who would come once or twice a year for a couple of weeks. And he had several centers all over the world, but they met at least twice a week to do practice on their own. When I travel a lot, for work, and I always, wherever I go, look into what Dharma centers are there, if there are, and you'd be surprised where you find Buddhism. It is all over the place. So, you have to do some digging and investigation. Do you view karma as a full reflection of one's entire life, or does each specific act bring about its own karmic result that exists on its own? Kind of both, really. Each specific act precipitates a reaction, but reactions don't happen in a vacuum with just you. You don't exist in a vacuum. You exist in interdependence and interconnectedness with all beings ultimately, but especially with beings in your immediate circle. So it's not just about you. It's about the causes and conditions in your life and how they're connected to other people and other beings and how these things interplay. Social drinking and meditation, how to reconcile those. I don't know. I don't recommend drinking and meditating. I would recommend doing one or the other. And not drinking as a substitute for meditation. Drinking because you like it, social drinking, you want to go out and drink, and it's not a problem. That's fine. Meditation should be its own time and your own thing. I don't think they're at odds, really. Being a part of the LGBTQ community, do Buddhists accept us or see us as deviants? We Buddhists accept 100%. There's nothing, like I said, Buddhism, there's not one set of laws written, and Buddhism is a wide spectrum. There's many different branches that most of them relate to different countries from where they come. Buddhism also, Dalai Lama has said this, when they learn something new, when science proves something, or when the consciousness comes to a point, they have to change things that don't match up. Buddhists accept, many Tibetan lamas I heard speak are totally acceptance of, LGBTQ community, different sexuality and all those things. And if they're not, they should be, in my opinion. So, yes, Buddhists are very accepting of that. Do not see that as deviant. I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm into the teaching of Dr. Dispenza. Are you familiar with him and his rewired approach? No, I'm not familiar with him. I don't look into a lot of for me, all the answers are here in these studies, in the studies of Tibetan Buddhism. And there are many teachers, people teaching meditation about the mind, about the brain. And if it works for you, if you get something out of it, it's great. I don't really want to look into other things. Life is short enough. We only have so much time to practice, and there's way more than I can ever practice in the path that I'm on. So I can't spread. There's a saying, if you're looking for water in the desert, do you build 1,000 holes 1 foot deep, or is it better to build one hole 1,000 feet deep? Okay. We have a book, speaking of the Dalai Lama, Ethics for the New Millennium, which I encourage all of you to get. I think you'll get a lot out of it. There it is on the screen. Just going to read a little bit of it today. All the world's major religions stress the importance of cultivating love and compassion. In the Buddhist tradition, different levels of attainment are described. At a basic level, compassion is understood mainly in terms of empathy, our ability to enter into and to some extent share others' suffering. But Buddhists, and perhaps others, believe that this can be developed to such a degree that not only does our compassion arise without any effort, but it is unconditional, undifferentiated, and universal in scope. He's saying our compassion can be developed into that. A feeling of intimacy towards all other sentient beings, including, of course, those who would harm us, is generated, which is likened in the literature to the love of a mother has for her child. So that's that bodhicitta, they call that. Bodhicitta means that kind of loving kindness, compassion that arises without effort, that becomes kind of the natural state of a bodhisattva, which is someone who dedicates their existence, their worldly existence, to the benefit of other beings, all beings, really. So right now we work with like relative compassion, right? Really trying to have compassion for the people in our lives, our fellow students, like what happened to Sharon. But the great, like great lamas, the people, real spiritual attainment are people who have developed that kind of level of compassion and loving kindness. You know, that's that is that takes a lot of work and a lot of practice and a lot of work on ourselves and a lot of meditation. I am not suggesting that each individual must attain this advanced state of spiritual development in order to lead an ethically wholesome life. But I do believe pushing the logic of compassion to the highest level can act as a powerful inspiration. If we can keep the aspiration to develop that great compassion as an ideal, it will naturally have a significant impact on our outlook. Just to be based on the simple recognition that just as I do, so do all others desire to be happy and not to suffer. It will serve as a constant reminder against selfishness and partiality. It will remind us that if we reserve ethical conduct for those whom we feel close to, the danger is we will neglect our responsibilities toward those outside this circle. It will remind us that there is little to be gained from being kind and generous because we hope to win something in return. It will remind us that actions motivated by the desire to create a good name for ourselves are still selfish. Actions motivated by the desire to create a good name for ourselves are still selfish, however much they may appear to be acts of kindness. Like, for instance, starting a meditation class, meditation with your name or my name, always having it in mind that the reason we're doing this is to be of benefit of others, not just to make a good name or people to think that you're a good guy or people to say that I do a class with this guy and he's so good and nice. No, you're doing it because it needs to be done and it's good to be done in the world. See, that's constantly checking the motivation, which is why when we start the class, we talk about motivation. We set the motivation. We're not just motivated by a desire to create a good name for ourselves. Because our ego is very powerful, our ego wants to win. Our ego wants to project this image of something that's very good and intelligent and maybe kind or, giving, charitable. It will also remind us there is nothing exceptional about acts of charity towards those we already feel close to, and it will help us to recognize that the bias we naturally feel toward our family and friends is actually a highly unreliable thing on which to base ethical conduct. Why is this? So long as the individuals in question continue to meet our expectations, all is well. But should they fail to do so, someone we consider a dear friend one day can become our sworn enemy the next. This is also true of partnerships. If our love for someone is based largely on attraction, whether it be their looks or some other superficial characteristic, our feelings for that person are liable over time to evaporate. When they lose that quality we found alluring, or when we find ourselves no longer satisfied by it, the situation can change. That's why relationships based purely on attraction are almost always unstable. On the other hand, when we begin to perfect our compassion, neither the other's appearance nor their behavior affects our underlying attitude. Many of you showed up for our colleague, our fellow student, Sharon, this week, and many of you didn't know her and just responded to the fact that someone needed help, needed some love and support. You know, it wasn't like it was your, you know, someone you live with, you know, someone you see every day. It was maybe someone you've never heard of, you don't know, you don't even know what they look like, but you responded out of a place of compassion. That's true compassion, you know. So I think what the Dalai Lama is talking about is opening and widening those feelings and trying to become more conscious of acting from those places in your life. And I say this all the time. This does not mean becoming a doormat and letting people abuse you or cheat you or mistreat you. It's just about being honest. And like Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche says, it's about having the courage to be decent, having the bravery to be kind. I don't know. Somehow I find that very moving. In the movie Crazy Wisdom, he says that, you know, not chickening out, having the courage to open your heart to others and not just the people in your circle, not just the people you like. Okay. All right. I'll take a few more questions and we'll meditate and then we'll close. What is your personal opinion on dying and death? Well, I think I've spoken about it before. I mean, I think, you know, in the Buddhist perspective, what happens when you die, we're basically made up of elements, right? I mean, we are made of physical things. There's the water element, right? Because there's water and blood and liquids in our bodies. So blood is mostly water. There's the earth element, which is actual whatever the substance we're made of, what is, you know, the molecules of skin and bone and tissue and those things. The wind element, which is the air we breathe. The fire element, which is the heat. Our body temperature is 98.6 degrees inside, which is very hot. That's not room temperature. That means something, there is a heat that's existing inside your body on its own. It's not out there, you know. It doesn't go up when the air is, you know, 30 degrees. It doesn't fall to 30 degrees immediately, you know. It can if you're exposed too long, but there is heat inside your body. And then there's the space element, which is not the air element. Space is, you know, space, literally. In between the molecules and in between these elements is space, similar to space or sky, that open emptiness, potentiality. Those elements, well, the four earthly elements, the air, water, heat, and earth, they will dissolve. So what's left is the consciousness at the time of death. And you go into the bardo. The bardo is a space between. There's many bardos. There's the bardo between thoughts. Between one thought and another, there's a gap. That's a bardo. There's a bardo between consciousness and being awake. When you go to bed at night and you go to sleep, that's a bardo. And then there's a bardo between lives, between incarnations. In the Buddhist tradition, there's 49 days often that you spend in the bardo. And then the consciousness is still there, but it's the consciousness without those elemental things. And the consciousness doesn't have that ground and root of the body anymore. And it's wandering in this bardo, and it can be very scary. This is where practice comes in, because if you can have awareness like we are cultivating in meditation, if you can become aware that you are actually in the bardo, especially if you have taken refuge and are Buddhist, and you can think about your Lama during this moment in the bardo, that will help you in your transition to the next incarnation, because you want another incarnation where you will get the Dharma again, or maybe you'll be a monk or a teacher. Maybe you'll find your teacher again in the next life. Maybe you'll become a Buddha in the next life. But the practice now, your practice of meditation, or if you become a Buddhist or you start to practice Buddhism, that practice becomes instrumental at the time of death. So what you're bringing, you're not bringing your memories. You may not even remember who you were as a person when you're in the bardo. What you do bring along is your karma, the karma that you've created, which I liken to like an energy field. And it's very much related to your karma at the time of death. How much, positivity, negativity, how, and what are the dominant factors. That's what you bring into the bardo. My views on death is that it's the body that dies, the physical elements of the body that dies, and consciousness is eternal, has never been created, will never be, disappear. It's something that's always existed, but it's not. The consciousness is not the self as we know it. It's not Michael, who was born in New York, who had become an actor, who was raised by these people. That's not the self. That's something we develop and create, and something that's imposed on us by our existence at this time in the world, right? But the true nature of the self is that clarity of mind that we work on in meditation. That's the consciousness. And when all the faults and obscurations are cleared away and misconceptions, that is Buddha. Buddhists believe that every sentient being has Buddha nature within us. And it's just a matter of working on clearing away the mental obscurations to that, to seeing that and knowing that and realizing that. And by realizing, I mean embody that and live with that. Like the Dalai Lama is talking about, expanding from an idea of compassion of people in your immediate circles to expanding that to all sentient beings. Someone like a Dalai Lama can do that. People like us have to work really hard on step one, which is developing patience and compassion for those who come into contact with us, sometimes on a very theoretical level. But this is the work. This is why we're doing it. Like I said, I am with you all. I'm where you're at, working through all these faults, delusions, misconceptions about who we are as as the self, as concept of self. Lots of concepts, lots of talking. There are, great beings alive right now, and who have been alive, who have much better ways of expressing these concepts. And if they interest you, I encourage you to find these teachers and these masters who can really expand and really bring you to some kind of realization. Is meditation the biggest part of Buddhism, or is there anything else you can do to practice? I kind of addressed this before. It's a very foundational practice. I was attracted to Buddhism because there's a practice. I looked into a lot of spiritual traditions that made a lot of sense when I'd read the book. You can read a book and it says, be in the moment and stay in the moment, and all these things about that all make a lot of sense. But if you don't have a practice, our habits, habitual response, and the way we see the world and the way we behave are so ingrained. It's like you can read a book on how to run a marathon, how to train for a marathon, but if you actually don't do the work, you can't just like go run a marathon. You know what I mean? Or like building muscle, becoming a bodybuilder. Well, you could read a book and understand how it works, but unless you actually do it, really commit to it, you could know every single thing about it. You could, but that doesn't mean anything's gonna change. People who bodybuilders know that that takes extreme amount of commitment on a daily, or almost daily basis. Doesn't matter how many books you read, just knowing it. Just reading books is not enough. Let's put it that way. Just knowing these things doesn't. I don't think it often will implement that much change unless you really start to practice these things. Meditation is a practice because you're dealing with the mind, and it's the mind that is your method of interaction with the world and with others, much more than than the physical. Okay, we will do 11 minutes of meditation and then dedicate it. eyes open. You can close them, but traditionally, my tradition would keep them open, not intensely staring, not out of focus, spaced out, lightly resting on whatever you're looking at. And that could be anything, really. Better if it's something static, not moving around, That could be distracting. Something inspiring if you want, photograph, a view, flower, blank wall even. Back to the breath. And if you feel uncomfortable, like I am right now, you can adjust your posture, adjust your legs or whatever it is. Don't feel like rigid and locked into that you can't move and you can't, scratch your nose if you have to or something. And the same with the breath. If you feel you need a deep breath, take one. But then go back and settle into the posture, into the stillness, settle into it. Settle back into that, relaxed breath. Okay, great. Next week, we're going to do Sunday. We're going to do it later, probably 5 or 6 hours later than we usually do it. So it'll be late in Europe, like 11 or something, but this will allow our family in Asia and New Zealand and Australia to have a bit of a normal time to do it. It'll be morning for them. So we're going to try that. Watch for the Instagram feed later this week for specific details, but figure next Sunday, probably around 2 or 3 Pacific time in the afternoon, which would be like 10 or 11 in Europe or later, and morning in Asia, New Zealand, Australia. Thanks again for being there, for Sharon, our sister. Let's dedicate. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. Means a lot to me and to many people. So good things. Thank you. See you next week. Sunday.